We begin with reminding ourselves why we come. We did this in the first session that we had, and we like to have this reminder repeatedly again and again, just to make sure we don't feel detached from the greater movement of the Ahlul Bayt, from the mission and objectives of Islam as a whole. Why do we come here? Because we said we refuse to be among those who just sit on the side and watch the religion of Allah, watch Islam be successful, and we have no share in it. We do nothing to actually help that happen. To be able to do that, we recognize that we need to become sufficient tools to be able to help in carrying that mission forward. And we also understand that to become those tools, we need to make sure we understand Islam itself properly. And through the understanding of what Islam is, we refine ourselves and become useful to the cause as a whole. We also saw that within Islam, the most fundamental, the best place to start is the most fundamental discussion that we can find. And in our first session, we looked at what that fundamental discussion would be. We came to the conclusion that that discussion is on Iman, on faith. Why did we say that? Because even those things that we consider to be the principles of our religion, even those things that we consider to be the roots of our religion, those things that we consider to be the fundamentals of our religion, when we want to express them, how do we express them? I believe in the existence of Allah. I believe in the oneness of Allah. I believe in prophethood. I believe. So, the foundation of just expressing what we consider to be the fundamentals of religion is Iman, is belief, having Iman in these things. So what is Iman? So we went on this journey to try and understand what this Iman actually is. And we said we'll do this in two ways. We split the discussion up into two. The first thing was looking at the virtues of the mu'mineen themselves. And then the second way was looking at Iman itself. So we'll have a look at the mu'mineen, and then we'll have a look at Iman. And we've spoken about how that's how Quran makes us understand these different concepts rather than dictionary definitions. What does it do? It gives you examples of the people who have those virtues, for example. And through that, it brings us closer and closer to understanding what those concepts actually are. So, in our discussion of the different virtues of the mu'mineen, what had we seen so far? The mu'mineen are those who are obedient towards Allah. They are those who look to settle differences among themselves. There are those who have taqwa, and if you remember, we had a long discussion at the start of what taqwa actually is, who the muttaqeen actually are. We saw that they are those whose hearts tremble with awe when Allah is mentioned, and we looked at exactly what that means. We saw that their faith is something that's dynamic. It's something that continuously moves. It's not something that's passive. Their faith grew. In fact, it's so dynamic. It's so susceptible to movement that even just by the recitation of the verses of the Quran, it increases. And we had reached the end of verse number 2 in Surah Anfal, which mentioned that another virtue of those who have faith is what? That they rely upon Allah. Once we finish looking at the different virtues of the mu'mineen, we're going to see how that has actually helped us come closer to understanding what Iman is supposed to be. And then hopefully we'll move on to the discussion of Iman itself. Like, what is it supposed to be? There's 3 things which I mentioned before, but we'll get onto afterwards. And hopefully we'll reach a correct place to finish off with. I don't want to leave you guys hanging in the discussion of Iman. So I'm going to do my best to try and reach the end of the discussion of Iman. Generally, I was mentioning to some of the brothers that what we're going to go through in 1 hour today would take almost 7 hours of class time. So hopefully, I'm hoping with the help of you brothers as well, that we're able to get through the discussions that we need to. So with that overview of what we've been doing so far and where we had reached in our discussion on the reliance upon Allah, we will look to try and understand what this Iman actually is. Please recite aloud salawat. If you remember last week, when we were having our discussion on tawakkul, when we were looking at this reliance upon Allah, we focused on what it isn't, right? And we mentioned the story of Hazrat Musa, Prophet Musa, Moses, and his relationship with his people, right? The conversation that they had in the Quran. It showed the attitude that Allah has towards those who think reliance upon Allah, tawakkul, means you don't have to do any work. God will take care of everything. Nabi Musa said, the people of Nabi Musa said to him, "O Moses, we will never enter it as long as they remain in it. Go ahead, you and your Lord, and fight. We will be sitting here." And what was the response of Prophet Musa? He said, "My Lord, I have no power over anyone except myself and my brother, so part us from the transgressing lot." And we mentioned this last time. We said that's how dangerous it is to think tawakkul, reliance upon Allah, means you don't have to do anything, God will take care of everything. It's so dangerous that the wali of Allah, the representative of Allah, would want to distance himself from you if you think you're not supposed to carry out your responsibilities and your obligations and God is supposed to sort everything out. Remember we said this, the Imam that we cry for, the Imam that we pray for, the Imam that we have so much love for. Imagine that you, as a result of living your life in a way that you think tawakkul means God will sort out everything and I don't have to do anything. Imagine because of that, that same Imam prays to Allah that he doesn't want to have anything to do with you. So definitely, we understand that tawakkul, this reliance upon Allah, cannot mean that we don't have to do anything and God will sort everything out. So what does it mean? Surah Ankabut, verse 58, the end of verse 58 and verse 59. We've mentioned this. We've mentioned the end of verse 58 previously as well. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نعم أجر العاملين. Remember, we had this discussion previously about this phrase. نعم أجر العاملين. Excellent is the reward of the workers, those who do. الذين صبروا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. Who have been patient and upon their Lord they rely. Okay, again, this reliance upon Allah, this talk of tawakkul comes in. But what is it saying? It describes the workers. It describes those who do as being those who have patience and reliance. What does that mean? That means unless you are among the workers, unless you're actually doing stuff and you're actually acting, reliance or tawakkul is not associated with you. Tawakkul is associated with those who are among the amilin, the workers. And again, notice here, it's like action comes first, sabr and tawakkul comes after. And we mentioned how But before the revolution, there were two currents. The Islamic revolution, there were two currents which were trying to bring about that revolution. One was the communist current and one was the Islamic current. One of the issues the communists had with Islam was they saw religion as an opiate of the masses, something which pacifies the people. It makes them shut up. It makes them not carry out actions, right? So how can you use religion to try and bring about a movement which will topple the oppressive government of that time? This was and one of the concepts which they used to directly attack was this tawakkul. They used to see how people would use this, how Muslims were using tawakkul, and they used to say, if you have something like that in your religion, how can you expect it to bring about change? Why? Which tawakkul did they see among the people? The tawakkul that they saw among the people, this reliance that they saw upon the people, was one which had nothing to do with action. In fact, it was an excuse not to act. So no wonder why they had an issue with it. People would be like, okay, we have so many problems. Don't worry, Allah will sort them out. That was reliance upon Allah. We don't have to do anything. We have no responsibilities. Allah will sort everything out. This is the tawakkul that they saw, and it's because of this type of thinking they would reach the conclusion that religion as a whole is an opiate of the masses, and because of the context, Islam that they saw among the people was also something that would be a pacifier. But not only is tawakkul not meant to be a pacifier, it's in fact meant to be such a strong motivator that nothing can motivate us like tawakkul in the harshest of times. So there's one thing where something just motivates you when everything's okay. There's another thing where something motivates you in times where there is no other reason for you to keep moving forward. When you think everything is finished. If you have a motivator for those times, imagine how powerful it is. That's what tawakkul is supposed to be. Just to explain that in an example, imagine someone is running away from the enemy and they run into an alley and they're completely surrounded. There's a few options that they have. They can either decide to join the enemy. They'll be like, do you know what? I'm not going to fight anymore. In fact, I'm going to help you guys out. Or they give themselves up to the enemy and become their prisoners. Or, for example, they just take their own lives. They're like, okay, there's no point. I'm not going to hand myself over. I'm just going to finish myself off. However, for those that believe in Allah, for those who rely upon Him, they know that even in such a situation where you're completely surrounded and you see no hope in the apparent, they know that Allah can always open the door for you. A path can always be opened by Him. And because they know that, because they have that reliance upon Allah in their hearts, even in such a situation, they won't stop fighting. They'll continue. The struggle will continue. All of a sudden, tawakkul is not a pacifier. Not only is it not a pacifier, it becomes such a strong motivator that even in such situations, it's going to keep you going. You guys all know the stories of the different battles of the early times of Islam. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from them. A lot of lessons, not just in terms of military strategy, but in terms of akhlaq. In terms of just the general ahkam, for example. In terms of spirituality, in terms of even mysticism. There's so much that we can gain by going through the different stories that exist of the different battles which existed near the beginning of Islam, in which the Prophet took part in. One of the lessons that we see from one of those battles is tawakkul from the Battle of Uhud. Right? Why? If you guys remember, the story of the battle was such that the Muslims seemed to have the upper hand. A group of them were asked to guard a specific area so that the enemy does not come from the other side, flank them, and attacks the Muslims. They thought that, do you know what? It seems like we're winning. So they left their guards, they left their horses, they went to where they saw the dead soldiers were, and they started collecting the spoils of war. Right? So they're gathering the spoils of war. In such a situation, remember, they've left their horses, they've left their weapons, they've left their shields so that they can carry as much spoils of war as possible. They have nothing to defend themselves with. In such a situation, they get attacked from both sides, charged by horses. Imagine, seeing yourself in that situation. It's like that alley. You're completely surrounded. You're finished. What more can you do? But in that situation, a clear difference was seen between those who understand what tawakkul is, what reliance upon Allah is, and those who don't. The ones who didn't, they saw this as the end and they gave up. They either began running away or they surrendered themselves. Remember, this was at the same time. Whilst they were being attacked, there was a rumor being spread that the Prophet had also been martyred. So literally, you don't have weapon, you don't have shield, you don't have your horses, the Prophet's been martyred, why are we even fighting? Finished. Right? In such a difficult situation. But those who relied upon Allah, what did they do? This is the first time the phrase was used, even if the Prophet has passed away, the God of the Prophet still exists, and they continue to carry out their responsibilities, and it's recorded in history who were the ones who ran away and who were the ones who stayed and fought. There's a clear distinction made between what reliance upon Allah does and what not understanding what reliance upon Allah does. Again, all of a sudden, tawakkul becomes something that is, not only is it not a pacifier, but it's such a powerful motivator that it gets you out of the harshest and the worst of situations. He mentions a point on the side. He likes to, prod the community that he was speaking to in terms of getting ready for rising up themselves. He said, remember, anyone who tries to use tawakkul, reliance upon Allah, to pacify you in carrying out your responsibility, they are either ignorant or they are working with the enemy. Close brackets. Obviously, he couldn't expand on that within his talk because of the situation that was around him. The last virtue that we want to look at, so this is another virtue of the mu'mineen, right? They are those who rely upon Allah. If you look at the next verse in Surah Anfal, verse number 3, what does it say? Who are the mu'mineen? Alladhina yuqimuna as-salah. Right? Alladhina yuqimuna as-salah. Why is it that Allah did not say the faithful are those who pray? Alladhina yusalluna, for example. Why is he saying the faithful are those who establish prayers? If you just wanted to say that, okay, the people who pray, they are among the faithful, then it was sufficient to just say الَّذِينَ يُصَلُّونَ. Why is he saying those who establish prayers? Atullah Khamenei, he says that one of the possible explanations is what Allah is speaking about over here is the faithful are those who don't just care about their individual acts of worship, rather they are those who take responsibility for trying to create a society or an environment in which prayers take place. Some people are so happy with their own prayers that they forget about everything else. In fact, they're so attached to their salah that they will pray all the 51 rak'ats that you're supposed to as a mustahab act throughout the day. And they'll do it every single day. But if you mention to them that, look at the society around you, look at the youths leaving Islam in droves, what would they say? It's like, whoa, like, I'm trying to protect my own religion here, right? You're telling me to like save others as well? Like, in this environment that I find myself in, like, this is hard enough as it is. You're giving me more responsibility. Remember we spoke about the circles? How if you want to protect yourself, don't think that you can be protected as an individual unless those who are closest to you are also working on their protection. And don't think that they can be protected unless the community is also working on their protection. And don't think that could happen unless that community is working on the wider society being protected. So those people who think that it's sufficient for me to just look after myself and my acts of worship as an individual and this will protect me, it's a joke. No, it won't. No, it won't. You need to create these buffers. You need to create these layers between yourself and shaitan. Otherwise, you're finished. Maybe that's why Allah didn't mention the faithful are those who just pray. No, the faithful are those who establish prayers. It's not being a mu'min, according to these verses, is not something you can just do by like carrying out an act and not thinking about others. We've seen it from the start to now. We've seen the emphasis on the responsibilities that the mu'mineen have upon others, right? But we've spoken about that before in detail, so I'm not going to go into that. What does establishing prayers achieve, right? So we're saying, okay, like the whole point is to not just worry about your individual prayers, but also create the environment and the grounds within society for prayers to take place. Why? For a lot of us, prayers become the end. They become the destination. We need to sort our lives out so that I can pray, right? Then there are those who recognize that salah itself, prayers themselves, are a tool for us to try and achieve something else. There's a big difference between the two. Salah was sent down for us to be a tool to try and achieve something else. So when you're talking about establishing salah within society, what are you saying? You're saying that we're trying to create a society which at least 10 times a day says what? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. What does that mean? You alone do we worship, you alone do we ask for assistance. This means you're creating a society which would refuse to bow down in front of anyone but Allah. Both see it as an individual, that this is what your repetition of these verses is supposed to do. But when you're trying to establish salah in the wider context, You're helping establish a society, a community which refuses to bow its head down to anyone but Allah. You're creating a society, again, 10 times a day, which disassociates itself with the dhalleen and upon those whom is the wrath of Allah. What does that mean? Both, again, on an individual level, that means you're going to want to stay away from those individuals, and you're helping create a society which will refuse to have the traits of those who the Quran condemns repeatedly. What's the philosophy of Salah? Our teachers tell us that one of the main philosophy, if not the main philosophy of Salah, is the destruction of the self. It's to completely destroy this I-ness which exists within us. And there's the different actions of Salah tell us this. For example, when you're standing up, you're supposed to be looking at the place of prostration. It's mustahab to look at the place of prostration. Why? Allah is trying to say, who do you think you are that you could be conversing with me and be looking at me? Again, completely destroying this ego, this arrogance that's within us. When we are going into ruku, it's mustahab to look towards our feet. When we're sitting down in tashahhud, it's mustahab to look towards our knees. Even the act of prostration itself, not just once, twice. All of these point towards what? The philosophy of Salah, which is what? Destroying this arrogance, this ego, this I-ness which exists within us. So when you're helping establish Salah, what are you doing? You're helping establish a society which breaks individualism, and brotherhood and sisterhood thrives within it. That's what you're helping to achieve. And who are the ones who help achieve that? They're the faithful ones. The ones who have Iman are the ones who try and do this. Not just worry about their individual prayers, but they try and achieve this. What is this telling us about the faithful? Remember we said that all of these different virtues are helping us do what? They're helping us come closer to Iman. So what does this make us think? Okay, so the faithful are those who are aware of the society that's around them. Okay? Iman is not detaching yourself from the rest of the world, for example. But we'll come closer to the conclusions afterwards. The last verse, the fourth verse of Surah Anfal. Ulaika humul mu'minuna haqqa. Reminder, why are we looking at these few verses of Surah Anfal? Because of the amount of emphasis that exists within it. In the beginning few verses, the challenge of Allah. Have these virtues, should you be among the faithful. Then it went on to say what? The faithful are only those who had those three virtues. And then now what is it saying after mentioning those virtues? Ulaika humul mu'minuna haqqa. It is they who are truly the faithful. How much more does God need to tell you that you need to take care of these things if you want to be counted as being among those who have Iman? And what is the reward for them? The verse carries on. لَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ وَرِزْقٌ كَرِيمٌ. They shall have ranks near their Lord, forgiveness and a noble provision. Remember our whole discussion about maghfirah, our whole discussion about forgiveness? When we realized all of a sudden, snap, forgiveness is not just I make a mistake, I ask for forgiveness and I get it. No. According to this, you do all of these things, and as a result of this, you get ranks near your Lord, you get forgiveness, and you get the noble provisions. Rizqun kareem. Just a small point on this rizqun kareem, noble provisions. What does it mean? That means that the rizq, whatever is provided for you, on one side there will be a source of honor and pride for you, and on another side you will not need to humiliate yourself, you will not need to bow down to anyone, you will not need to compromise to try and achieve that provision. So on one side it's a source of honor and dignity for you. On the other side, you would not have needed to bow down or compromise anything to be able to achieve them. That's what the noble provisions are. As an individual, if I ever feel that this rizq, these provisions which I have are not a source of honor, dignity, and something to be proud of for myself, then I need to go through this checklist again. Okay, this is what the virtues of the Iman are. Because if I had these, then it's a promise of Allah that my rizq will be noble, my provisions will be honorable. And as always in our discussions, let's not just stick to the individual. On the level of a society, on the level of a nation, right? If there is a nation that is trying to pursue Iman in its rightful manner, then the rizq which they will gain will be a source of pride and honor and dignity for them. But at the same time, if they are not pursuing Iman, they will always be humiliated. The rizq that they have, you may have the biggest resources of oil in the world, but you will still be humiliated repeatedly, again and again, if you are not pursuing Iman. On one side, you have these Gulf states. They have everything you could think of in the world. Money, natural resources, whatever you want. They have it all. Right? But look at how they are puppets of other than Allah. Look at how they have to compromise their religion. Look at how they have to bow down in front of other than Allah to receive those provisions. And look at how those same provisions become a source of humiliation for them. That we sit over here right now and we laugh at them. So much they have, but because as a nation they do not pursue Iman, this is the result. What they have will never become a source of pride and honor for them. On the other side, you have the Islamic Republic and what they went through. You have a bloody revolution in which you give so many shuhada. After the revolution, you have one bomb blast which takes away 72 of the cream of what was supposed to become the government. In which you have the likes of Shaheed Bihishti and Shaheed Bahonar, Shaheed Rajai taken out in one bomb blast. Then after that, you have an 8-year war in which you give 500,000 shuhada. And after that, you have the most crippling sanctions in the history of sanctions. At the end of it all, this is how much you have. This is how much you have. But that little bit that you have, look at how much a source of honor and pride it is for us. That we can say, even with the little that we have, but because they were pursuing Iman, Allah fulfilled the promise, and the little that they have is a source of honor and pride. They did not have to bow down to get it. They relied upon themselves. Look at the countries around them. Unfortunately, we've seen what happened to Iraq. We've seen what happened to Syria. We've seen what happened to Pakistan. We've seen what happened to Afghanistan. For us, there is hope in the pursuit of Iman. Because we can see that if we do try and pursue that, then maybe we can keep our heads high and be a source of pride for others, to a stage where even the enemies have to begin praising us. Please recite salawat. There's a beautiful quote. Again, this just gives you like so much pride and like honor. It's like, subhanAllah, these were our scholars. The beautiful quote of Imam, attributed to Imam Khomeini. It says, if they put sanctions upon us, remind them that we are the sons of Ramadan. And if they take us to war, remind them that we are the sons of Muharram. Even with the little that we have, our heads stay up. Why? Because inshallah we're in the pursuit of Iman. It's a promise of Allah that our heads will remain up. Okay, so finishing the virtues of the mu'mineen, how have we come closer to understanding what Iman is? The most important thing that we take out from these different traits, there's a lot, but again, I'm trying to condense it down to this final talk, inshallah. One of the main things that we take out from the traits of the mu'mineen is that Iman is not something which is just supposed to stay in the heart. Every single trait we have gone through of the mu'mineen shows how it needs to be alive in our day-to-day lives, how Iman needs to be alive in our day-to-day lives. Iman is something which is seen in our words, actions, and decisions. So we know for sure, like, one thing that Iman has to have is that it needs to be seen in our words, actions, and decisions. Just to like solidify this point, if belief just in the heart was sufficient and it was not necessary to see it within our words, actions, and decisions, then the biggest mu'min out of all of us, the biggest person of faith out of all of us would be who? Iblis. Does anyone doubt that he doesn't believe in God? Of course he believes in God. He worshipped him for 6,000 years, or different riwayat, but thousands of years. But at the end of the day, when it came the time to show that Iman within his decisions, one wrong decision finished. Another example from history is Amr ibn As. He witnessed Ghadir. He's one of the narrators of Ghadir, what happened at Ghadir. He saw it with his own eyes. He heard everything. What did he say on his deathbed? He said, I sold my afterlife for the dunya of Muawiyah. He ended up fighting against Amir al-Mu'mineen. I sold my afterlife for the dunya, for the world of Muawiyah, knowing that Ali was on the truth. He had certainty in his heart. He believed that Amir al-Mu'mineen was on the truth. But do we remember him as a Shia? Do we remember him as a follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen, as a follower of the Ahlul Bayt? No. Why? Because this belief that you hold, it brings about responsibilities. This belief that you hold is supposed to be seen in the decisions that you made. And what was the decision he made? That he's going to side with Muawiyah. Believing Amir al-Mu'mineen was on the truth. SubhanAllah. Like, do we need a more clearer example of why it's so important to not just leave Iman in the hearts? And I say that because one of the biggest weaknesses Shaitan has, one of the biggest strengths that Shaitan has, one of the biggest weapons he has against us is that he makes us see the weaknesses of others so big that we forget to see our own weaknesses. So we're like, these guys were so bad, and their Iman stayed in their hearts, and they should have done this and done that. Okay, what about us? Are the decisions that we make in our day-to-day life in accordance with this belief that we have or not? Because if they aren't, how different are we from those who are classified as the die-hard enemies of the Ma'asumi? God forbid, on the day of judgment, we realize when we rise up and we happen to be in their ranks and not on the side of the Ahlul Bayt. The amount of times the Quran mentions Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. So many times. Iman and amal. So many times it's come together that you reach certainty. If you have Iman just by itself without the actions, that Iman is not going to help you in this world or the next. According to the Quran, there is no such thing as Iman by itself. It has no value. I'm going to read a passage from the book. Those people that thought that Iman is something for the heart and it does not necessitate obligations, and just by having it in the heart they will be classified as being among the mu'mineen, those people who thought that just by believing without actions, without struggling and striving, God will give them, so they thought God will give them promises which He has promised the mu'mineen. Those people who thought that heaven will be given in exchange for just a state of the heart without any actions, those people that thought that if we minus the actions, then the Iman will still have value, these people must ponder over these verses and other verses repeated throughout the Quran. They will see that the only Iman that has value according to the Quran in the eyes of Islam is Iman, which comes alongside actions, responsibilities, duties and obligations. That is the only Iman which is of value in accordance with Islam. O you who have faith, subhanallah. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu rka'u wasjudu wa'budu rabbakum waf'alu khayra la'allakum tuflihun. How much more apparent does God need to make it? O you who have faith, bow down and prostrate yourselves and worship your Lord and do good so that you may be among the victorious. Does it say, oh, you who have faith, you will be victorious? No. You have to have faith. And you need to bow down. And you need to prostrate. And you need to worship your Lord. And you need to do good. Only then will you be among the victorious. If you do not have all of these things, you will not be classified as being among the victorious. Your Iman will not grant you victory. إن الذين آمنوا وهاجروا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله والذين آووا ونصروا أولئك بعضهم أولياء بعض. Indeed, those who have believed and immigrated and fought with their wealth and lives in the cause of Allah, and those who gave shelter and aided, they are allies of one another. Subhanallah. What does the verse say? But those who believed and did not immigrate. For you there is no guardianship of them until they immigrate. And if they seek help of you for the religion, then you must help accept. And the verse carries on. Subhanallah. Does it need to be any more clearer than that? In one verse, God speaks of those who have Iman and did emigrate and did strive and did struggle. In the same verse, it mentions those who had Iman, but they did not follow through with the actions. So, we understand, the first thing that we understand about Iman is that it has to permeate through our actions, our words, and our decisions. Otherwise, according to Islam, it's of no value. The next thing that we understand about Iman is that it has to be based upon understanding. If your Iman is not based upon understanding, according to the Quran, according to Islam, it is of no value. a lot of the iman, a lot of the beliefs that Khamenei saw, Ayatollah Khamenei saw around him within that society was based on two things. Either it was based on emotions, believing in something emotionally, or it was inherited, believing in it because, for example, I was born in that family, or, for example, the local scholar said so, therefore they believed in it, right? These two. Something being based on emotions would be, for example, I don't believe in this. Why? Because this person that I really don't like, he believes in it. Therefore, I don't believe in it. Right? To attain this kind of iman is very easy. You don't have to do anything. Okay, I'm born in the family. Like, meh. I didn't have to put in any effort to become a Muslim. Right? The easier it is to get something, the easier it is for it to be taken away from you. Imagine that I only need to work 5 minutes to be able to earn enough money to pay for a phone. Imagine there's someone else who needs to work 2 years and save up money for them to be able to buy the phone. Do you think it will be easier to try and take away the phone from the first guy or the second guy? Naturally, the one who has had to put in effort, put in more effort, will be guarding his phone more than the person who has put in less effort. Same thing with iman. When iman is inherited or it's purely based on emotions, it's something which is easily gained. Therefore, it's very easy for it to be taken away from us. And he goes on to say that whilst before this may not have been a problem, now it is. We're talking about 5 years before the revolution, but it still rings true for us as well. He says, before this may not have been a problem, too much of a problem, but now it is. Why? Because before, the enemies thought that if you want to destroy Islam, you kill the Muslims. But then they realized if you want to destroy Islam, you don't need to kill the Muslims. Attack their iman. Finish. They could call themselves Muslims as much as they want. In fact, we'll even build their mosque for them. But you take out the spirit of Islam. You take out iman. And now because you have, we mentioned this before, now you have industries worth billions taking the iman away from the generations that are coming now, directly attacking that. All of a sudden, it's not sufficient for us just to be born in a Muslim family. It's not sufficient for us to have our iman just purely be based on emotions. Right? No. Islam says, in general, and especially in these times, that if your iman is purely this, and because it can be taken away so easily, we don't see value in it. Which is the Islam that you're supposed to have? You're supposed to have the Islam which is based on understanding. Your iman is supposed to be based on understanding. Surah Baqarah, verse number 285, the apostle and the faithful have faith in what has been sent down to him from his Lord. Each of them has faith in Allah, his angels, his scriptures, and his apostles. They declare, we make no distinction between any of his apostles. And they say, who is they? The mu'mineen. What do the mu'mineen say? We hear and obey. Right? The mu'mineen say, we hear and obey. What does that mean? Is it just, okay, I'm speaking and the sound is reaching your ears? No, the hear is a reference to understanding. Right? The mu'mineen are those who understand and then they obey. Jesus write salawat. If you look at how Allah deals with faith that is not based upon understanding, you see like which type of faith you're supposed to have. Surah Ma'idah, verse 104. When they are told, come to what Allah has sent down and come to the apostle, they say what? sufficient for us is what we have found our fathers following. Inherited faith. What's the response? What? Even if their fathers did not know anything and were not guided, they're still going to follow them? That's such a ridiculous notion that God doesn't even go on. That's sufficient. Really? Your iman is based upon, it's inherited, it's based upon you just being born in this family? It's like ridiculing it. That's the tone used by Allah towards those who do not have faith based on understanding. Okay. Again, summarizing. First thing we understood was what? Iman has to be seen in our actions. The second thing we understand right now is that it needs to be based upon understanding. The third thing that we understand about Iman according to the Quran is it needs to be consistent. Iman cannot be something which is there one day and not the other. It can't be something which we believe in when it suits us and we ignore when it goes against us. Surah Nur. I'm going to run through these verses. Certainly we have sent down illuminating signs, and Allah guides whomever He wishes to the straight path. Next verse. But the hypocrites say, we have believed. Okay, again, these are people who are claiming to have Iman. The hypocrites say, we have believed in Allah and in the Messenger and we obey. Then a party of them turns away after that. Next verse. And when they are called to the words of Allah and His Messenger to judge between them, at once a party of them turns aside. Why do they turn aside? Next verse. If the right is theirs, they come to Him in prompt obedience. What does that mean? Yeah, we believe in the Prophet, we believe in his judgment, we believe in the judgment of Allah as long as it benefits us. If it does not benefit us, or why were they turning away before? Because they were afraid that what was going to be told to us, it's not in accordance with what we want. What does the next verse say about these types of people? Is there a disease in their hearts? أَفِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٍ? Or have they doubted? Or do they fear that Allah will be unjust to them or His Messenger? Rather, it is they who are the wrongdoers. If your iman is not consistent, it's only there when it suits you, then again, according to the Quran, according to Islam, there's no value in it. Next verse, the only statement of the true believers, the only statement of the mu'minun is what? When they are called to Allah and His Messenger to judge between them, the only thing they say is what? We hear and obey. And those are the successful ones. Regardless of whether it suits them or not, regardless of whether that judgment benefits them or not, favors them or not, the only response they have is we hear and obey. Again, hear meaning we understand. We're not just like accepting whatever He says because we feel like it. No, we understand what His position is and therefore we obey. So these were the three things. Iman has to be seen within our actions. Iman has to be based upon understanding, and Iman has to be consistent. Now, when I say I believe in the existence of God, what you're saying is that this belief of mine you will see in my actions. This belief in the existence of God is based upon understanding. And this belief in the existence of God is something which will be consistently there. Same when it comes to prophethood, for example. What does it mean when I say I believe in the prophethood of the final messenger? It means that you will see it in my actions. It means that it's based upon understanding, and it means that it will be consistent. I won't just follow the prophet when it suits me and not follow him on other times. So whenever we say I believe and we have a statement after it, it means that these three things must always be there. And we finish on this final verse. And I promise to you, there's not too many points about this. The verse itself is so powerful. Surah number 24, verse 55. Again, continuation of Surah Nur, but the previous verses were up to verse 51. Jump ahead slightly, verse 55, Surah Nur. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah has promised those who have believed among you and done righteous deeds. We've been on this whole journey of trying to understand what Iman is. Inshallah, we can be among the mu'mineen. What has been promised to the mu'mineen? He will surely grant them succession to authority upon the earth, just as He granted it to those before them, and that He will surely establish for them therein their religion, which He has preferred for them, and that He will surely substitute for them after their fear, security, for they worship Me, not associating anything with Me. But whoever disbelieves after that, then those are the defiantly disobedient. What is this saying? All the pains, all the problems, all the sorrow, all the grief that the Ahlul Bayt themselves have had, and all of the tears that we have shed in the love of the Ahlul Bayt, all the shahadats, so many martyrdoms from the time of the Prophet till today, everything that we have suffered, if we are among the faithful, what will happen? A time will come when all of this will be turned into security. All of this will be turned into victory. But brothers and sisters, what is the point over here? The point is this, that if you have not been among the faithful, you may be around when we achieve this victory, but if you're not among the faithful, all of the efforts of the prophets, all of the efforts of the Ahlul Bayt, all of the suffering that we've had, all of the martyrdoms that we've had, everything, if you have not been among the faithful and you are around when this victory is achieved, you're not going to feel it. You're not going to taste the sweetness of it. Imagine being in that position. That subhanAllah, everything happened so that you can actually be alive when the victory is achieved, but you still don't feel it. Why? Because your iman was either not seen in your actions, your iman was not based on understanding, or your iman was not consistent throughout your life. God forbid we reach that stage. We thank Allah for giving us the opportunity to get together every week. We thank Allah for giving us the chance to say and hear what will inshallah help us gain proximity towards Him. We pray to Allah to help all those who are oppressed, who are ill, in poverty, in prison around the world, ease their difficulties for the sake and the right of the Ahlul Bayt. And as always, our most heartfelt dua that should always be there for the believers. We pray that Allah hastens the reappearance of the final Imam. And we pray that we can also be among those who not only help bring him back, but continue his mission once he's come back by the blessing of a loud salawat.